Welcome to the Sanity Project podcast, where you can awaken your mind to clarity and success even in today's life challenges. We're here to provide insights and solutions that will help you live a sane, healthy, and prosperous life. Here's your host, Joanne Victoria.
Hello, everyone. This is Joanne Victoria with another amazing episode of the Sanity Project podcast. You are here to discover a life of clarity, confidence, sanity, and entrepreneurial success. Our guest today is Rodney C. Burris. Rodney is one of America's top leaders in unlocking human potential and inspiring organizations to greatness. Rodney is the author of Get Off the Cycle and Run, the #1 most trusted path to happiness. Rodney has assisted companies with team building, communication, data evaluation, and program development. His workshops and seminars are among the most popular in the United States as well as abroad. Let Rodney help your team overachieve. Welcome to the show, Rodney Burris.
Thank you so much. Hello, Joanne. Hello, everybody listening with us. Thanks for having me.
I'm grateful that you are here because we're in total alignment about tapping into our true selves, which is what you're going to be talking about. But first, I want the audience to know who you are, where you came from, and how did you get to this place where you were writing Get Off Your Cycle and Run, which is what, your 10th book, 9th book, something like that?
Yes. So, how did I get to that book and that title? Well, Get Off the Cycle and Run is a member of a series of books about breaking negative habits. And I think the #1 issue with some of us, right? I can't say all of us, Joanne, but I could say some of us, with myself included, is simply not even being aware of how I contribute to the cycles I find myself in, right? The repeated relationships, the same kind of experiences, job after job, you know what I mean? The same type of money situation. I come into some money, I lose some money after a while. Like, how in the world does this keep happening over time and time again? And it's in recognizing our own agency, right? Mm-hmm. And so the whole idea and the premise behind the Get Off the Cycle and Run is twofold. One, it is paralleling the basic workings of a bicycle to repeated habits and patterns and relationships in our life, right? So on the front cover of the book, it says, if you can understand how a bike works, you can understand how life works, right? It's that simple. And it literally says that on the front cover. It's that simple. So that's the first thing. And just kind of breaking down those parallels. One of my favorite quotes, Joanne, is from a gentleman by the name of Albert Einstein, of course. Mm-hmm. And Albert Einstein said, if you can't explain it simply, you don't really get it yourself. And I took that to heart when I heard it years ago, because sometimes I was a victim, or I don't even know if a perpetrator, I think that's a better word, of over complicating things, right? Some things can be very, very, very simple. And so the parallel for the book is, if you can understand how this simple bicycle works, that we've been around in some shape or fashion our entire lives, we can thereby, through that lens, understand life, right? So that's the first thing. And then the second thing is, if you're going to get off the cycle, you want to make progress. Right? You want to do something with that. You don't want to just kind of get off the cycle and mosey. You don't want to kind of get off that cycle and linger or kind of sit down, but you want to actually move with purpose and intention. Running embodies that, right? Running embodies that. So that's kind of like the analogy that's embedded within the title. But where did the title come from itself? So if I may, one day my mom called me. I'm the oldest of 3 children, and I have 2 younger sisters. And she called me one day. She had a house full of young ladies at that point. I had moved out and gone to college, and she was fed up, for lack of a better word. She was at her wit's end. She was sick of all the young ladies under her care kind of repeating the same struggles. She calls me by my middle name. So my name is Rodney C. Burris. The C stands for Christopher. So my mom calls me Chris. And so she was like, Chris, we've talked about these things. We've argued about them. We've prayed about them. We've fussed about it. We've done all of the work and they keep doing it. Like we keep finding ourselves over and over and over again in these same situations. And her voice, Joanne, was on level squeaky. Like it was on level.
No oxygen left. She was done.
Yes. And so I'm listening to Mom. I'm listening to her go. And, she said, and also for the young ladies that were living in the home, one of the things that she pointed out was some of the struggles that the girls were going through, their own mothers had dealt with them in their lives, which kind of led to the breakdown in their homes, which kind of led to them being under my mom's care informally. It wasn't like a formal foster care type situation. She was like the neighborhood family mama sort of thing. And, so they were all in the home and she was dealing with this and she was like, who's going to break the cycle, Chris? And then she said these words, somebody just needs to get off the cycle and run.
Wow.
And when she said that, Joanne, I envisioned somebody on an exercise bike, like a spin cycle, pumping, sweating, trying, crying, but not going anywhere.
Right.
And then that same person getting off of that bike, using that same effort, that same push, and taking off, running out the door. And while I was kind of envisioning that, my mom says, you just need to write a book. And so I was like, maybe. I mean, I had never thought about really writing a book at that point. I had done a lot of work in the professional development spaces. I had done a lot of work with collegiate groups and nonprofit teams at that point. But I never thought about penning a book. And so when she said it, something clicked in me, Joanne, and I felt like this is what I was supposed to be doing. I don't really know how else to explain it outside of that. It was just kind of like this knowing that I could have let pass by, like, oh, that's just, indigestion, right? No, that's just me overthinking it. But I decided to go with it. And when I sat down, Joanne, and kind of put keys to the keyboard and put fingers to the keyboard, the analogies about how a bike parallels life. So, for example, if a cycle is any sort of repeated situation that we continuously find ourselves in, if we think about a bicycle, the handlebars help with steering, right? That's how you steer the bike. So if I find myself in a situation over and over and over again that I don't have control over, right? I probably would do better instead of repeating it ad infinitum, getting off of that thing and using my own energy, my own effort, my own agency in running, right? Moving with progress. The pedals, for example, the pedals is what drives the bicycle forward. So if I'm in a situation over and over and over again, but I don't have any passion, I don't like this, I don't have the drive, it's kind of like it's pulling me along, I probably would do better getting off of that. That's right. Yeah. And so that, I mean, the whole way through, the frame of the bike and the seat of the bike and the chain and all of those sort of things. And then the different types of cycles, and from motorcycles to tricycles. And I even had this one thing about like a Ferris wheel, which is not any type of those cycles, but it is a type of cycle that has this lulling effect, right? It's this kind of like ethereal, romanticizing kind of experience, but we have no control at all. Like this, there's no handlebars the first, right? Anywhere there. We're kind of just locked in and stuck. And it is the epitome of living a lie that we are aware of, that we're choosing to participate in because the highs feel so good, right? But we get locked in a way where even if we come to at a certain point, we can't even get off at right then and there. But instead of hopping off, we kind of just see that thing out and maybe we get back on it or maybe we hop off. And so the Ferris, I mean, it was just so many in that book, Joanne. And I felt like Neo Neo off the Matrix, when he didn't know how to fight. He didn't know how to do anything, right? And he sat in that chair and got plugged in. And it was like all of that knowledge was downloaded. That, Joanne, was kind of like what my own experience was like. It felt like it was a download, to be honest with you, that pumped out that book. So that was the first book in the series. And then there's a whole bunch that kind of play off of that. And those are my books.
Well, it's interesting to me. There's alignment between you and I more ways than one. Obviously, you're talking about tapping into our true selves by embracing confidence and breaking cycles. And when one of the first workshops I did was How to End All Negative Habits. Literally, that was the title of it. And you mentioned that at the beginning of our conversation. And I have a son named Christopher.
Yes,
I do. Now, I'm the only one who calls him Christopher. I don't like nicknames. But his friends, his clients, all of that, they all call him Chris, but I call him Christopher.
But you call him Christopher.
Oh, he's Christopher. Isn't
that such a funny alignment right there?
I know. But, and when you're talking about, especially on the Ferris wheel, I don't like them myself because there's no control.
Yes.
That's part of it, but they're also just big and scary.
Yeah.
And
right?
I look at that as life now, today, in what you're speaking about. And then when you get to the bottom, when you're not getting off, you're just sitting at the bottom of this Ferris wheel, and it's like somebody else is in charge of your life.
Yes.
And that's not true, but that's the way it is. And many people in our country, in our world, in our, units around us, they are sitting at the bottom of a Ferris wheel.
Yeah.
They have given up. And you are providing opportunities here. And I always remind the listeners, please re-listen to this podcast and have a pen and pad in front of you to take notes, because that's what you remember is what you write down by hand, not by the computer keys.
Yes. Using our hands definitely helps tie it into our subconscious, our psyche, our inner man, like whatever word, we choose to use to kind of identify that same thing, the broader mind, the higher self. Writing it bridges this connection between the physical and the ethereal between us, the intangible parts of us, the mind-brain connection.
Right.
So that's absolutely spot on. The thing that happens in cycles seems to be this, right? I don't want to come across as this is a one size fits all, but if anything I'm sharing resonates with any member of our audience, Joanne, then, that's wonderful. Like that's the goal. So see if this resonates with you. So, or, you all listening with us right now. So, some cycles that we find ourselves in, we don't want to get off, right? And I mentioned the tricycle as an example, right? Most of us had the little red tricycles with the flares or like the little streamers hanging off the handlebars. And it was so fun. And it represents something that was very, very necessary and helpful to us at a point in our lives where we needed we needed something with a low center of gravity. We needed the stability and the grounding that comes with that sort of pattern, those sort of relationships, those sort of activities. Then we get older. And some of us say this phrase right here, Joanne, that's just the way I've always been.
Scary.
You just need to accept me for who I am. That's just what it is. And the issue with that is in real life, if we looked over and saw anybody connected to us hunched over a little red tricycle, right? At whatever age we are currently, but they're trying to pedal this thing, we would think they were so foolish. Like, what are you doing? Like that but it's mine. And I got this from my dad, my mom, my such and such. It means the world to me. Yes, true, phenomenal. But at this point, it no longer serves you. It actually is an impediment. You can't even really take it to the places you want to go. It doesn't go that fast. It's holding you back. You would do better to get off of that and run. As a parallel, that makes a lot of sense. But when we think about our shyness, or our aggressiveness or our over playfulness or our poor attention to money or our, the way that we respond when somebody says something small and we kind of take it as a personal offense. Any of those things can be explained away, right? Any of those things like, oh, no, I see the point. But in this situation, my poor behavior and my repeated behavior is different, is valid because, and sometimes it takes a mirror to let us see ourselves through a different lens, through something simple, like a little tricycle, so that we can see how we are interacting in those cases.
So how do you transfer this model of getting off the cycle and running into the business world?
Yes. All right. So I compare the work that I do as a professional development coach, as a leadership development trainer, actually to being like a little bee, like a honeybee, right? That gets to go from pasture to pasture, garden to garden, flower to flower, picking up pollen and dropping off pollen. And what I've learned, Joanne, is sitting with the management, supervisors, the leadership of these different organizations, there are some best practices that have come out. And being able to kind of see the connection between those, well, something that came out in my learnings and my travels and kind of sitting, as I share, I also learn, is we as a company deal with the personal experiences of our employees, whether we want to admit that or acknowledge that or not, right? So if they have poor communication skills, that's not just something that happens on the job between 9 to 5. That's something that happens on the weekends and the evenings as well. And oftentimes a negative experience, especially a heightened negative experience, carries over the next morning. So if something happens that evening and they bring it into work with them the next day, we as an organization have to deal with that, whether we want to or not, whether we believe it's a part of the role or not. And so I found myself being called in at first to kind of talk about what are some keys to management? Like, what are some things that we can do to kind of improve processes and improve return on investment and improve productivity? And what I began to see is our real work as leaders is dealing with the core of the people so that we increase retention, so that we decrease turnover, that we improve workplace morale and work-life balance. And so the book about cycles and how we look at each other, interact with each other, became something that people started picking up. Like they just started picking up over and over and over again. And we talked about that more than we talked about, their policies or procedures. And I learned that it was more productive for the supervisor teams that I was working with for us to kind of unpack that. So, for example, as a person, I had this one gentleman who he was working at a construction company. I've done work across industries, university, sport, athletic teams, construction, churches, community organizations, like across industries. Well, this particular guy was working in a construction company, and he literally said, "I didn't come here to work today." He had a bad attitude. He didn't want to be a part of the workshop. And he loudly proclaimed, "I didn't come here to work today." Well, what is that? Relationships, attitudes are often indicative of poor connections between people or inside of a person that has nothing to do with the work at hand. And if we focus on just the work, we're going to be kind of beating our head against the wall all day. So the parallels between the cycles and how it relates to the workplace kind of naturally sprung up from the supervisor teams that were bringing me in.
So when he said he didn't come to work, he thought he was just going to sit and listen to you talk to him? Gotcha.
So the deal was this. They knew that today was going to be a day where, you know, we got this guy coming in. He's going to talk to us for a little bit, kind of get the day started. This has also been something similar, Joanne, when I've done work with police and officer groups, different districts around. I've been up in Connecticut and in Maryland, and I get to come to their roll call. So some organizations have a meeting every single morning of some sort of varying lengths, right? Well, this construction company was one of them. So I was coming to kind of be a part of their morning meeting so that then they can then take that little burst and go out and do what they had to do, right? I was brought in by two of the supervisor members. Well, some way, somehow, either this guy understood that this was going to be a day-long thing, that he didn't have to work that day, or he just was using it as an occasion to, I don't know. I don't know how you show up in a hard hat and a tool belt to
I think he was going to sleep with his eyes open and get paid for it, but not participate because he was a hammer and nails dude, not a thinking dude or something like that. Dude. I don't know. It sounds a little, you know, there are people who just, you know, sit there with their arms crossed and, you know, wait until you talk at them from their perspective as opposed to, you know, talk with or through them. So what was the outcome of that?
So what happened was he had a really bad blow up session at his house earlier today, right? I mean, earlier that day.
Sure.
And so it was one of those situations where whatever happened in the home had put him in a place where he just didn't feel like anybody's drama. Like, I don't feel like dealing with anybody. The issue is, come to find out after, you know, it was a bunch of like sidebar conversations. I actually kept going, right? I acknowledged what he said. I was like, okay, you know, well, if you came to work or you didn't, you know, I'll let you guys sort that out. But, and I kind of kept moving, right? I kind of kept moving because the announcement was made that after Mr. Burris is done, you know, we're going to wrap up and then we're going to hit the projects, kind of get on site, et cetera, et cetera. And in the middle of me talking, I said, let me wrap you guys up so you can guys get on out of here. He said, man, I ain't going nowhere. I didn't come here to work today, right? I acknowledged what he said. I kept moving. At the end of it, one of the supervisors pulled him to the side and for whatever reason pulled me and another supervisor into like a talk with him. He had the blow up earlier that day. He didn't really feel like anybody's crap. But what I was getting from him is that he processed a lot of people's interactions through the lens of offense, right? That seemed to be his MO, right? If you do, whether it's, within the 20 minutes that we talked, it ended up being a very long convo, about a 25 minute talk. In the time of him talking, it came out that, you know, he didn't like taking stuff from people on the bus. I live in the city. I live in Baltimore. He didn't like taking stuff from people that was, you know, outside. He didn't like taking no stuff from people on the job with him. Everybody kind of knows that. He's the common denominator. I was just
going to say, he's the workshop. He's it. He represents. Yes. So, you know, his representation covered everyone.
Right. It covered everybody. And so just kind of getting him to see himself, it didn't happen in 20 minutes, right? It was a long conversation. But the deal is, unless I as a company am ready to fire, hire, orientation, retrain, go through that process, 90-day, do you fit with our company culture? Oh, you don't. Day 70, I found, let me hire, fire, retrain, or right. Unless I'm ready to go through that, ready to get HR to kick in the whole healthcare policy procedure, unless I'm ready to do that, it may be to my advantage as a cost savings mechanism to take the time to build the person. And what we've done, I think societally, Joanne, is that in the younger elementary years, a lot of the focus in kindergarten and pre-K and first grade is on building the person, sharing, standing in line, waiting our turns, taking a goddamn nap when we feel cranky or tired, right? Little things like that. And somewhere, somehow, we no longer feel it's necessary to kind of focus on those things. And I believe we do ourselves as a society a disservice, because I think that sharing, caring, waiting my turn will help me in my marriage, right? It will help me in negotiations, right? Contract negotiations with somebody on the other side of the table that we are not seeing eye to eye. It could help me in world affairs, right? Wars between countries and nations. If we just knew how to listen from your perspective to see how I may be getting in my own way, right? Am I hangry? And I know that's a funny little colloquial term, but it's so true. We recognize it with babies. Oh, they're just tired. The baby is a little human. Well, big humans have the same sort of dynamic, right? Big humans also get cranky when they're tired, cranky when they're hungry.
Oh, yes.
So really just recognizing those parallels. And I've been fortunate to come in contact with leaders who not only see it once we come in and have these conversations, Joanne, but then they started referring me to their friends, and their friends, leaders hang with leaders. So although their leaders may not have been in the construction industry, just like them or others, I was getting referred across industries. So for the longest time, I didn't have all of the packaging and bells and whistles and the 3-part trifold pamphlet brochure, because I didn't need it, because this president, this VP was calling his good buddy that they golf with and say, oh, you need to get this guy in. Wasn't you just telling me about XYZ? And so that has been a large driver in the work that I do.
Yeah, it's once you answer the unasked question, which is what you do. You answer the unasked question and it's solved. Whoever is referring you doesn't care about your paper, doesn't care about your website, doesn't care about your business card. They just know that their friend needs you.
Yes.
So how can the people who are listening now find you? Where are you? How can they access you? Do you have a website?
I do. So everything that I do is under my regular old name. My name is Rodney C. Burris, and Burris is spelled Burris. So if you use Rodney C. Burris in any of your favorite social media platforms, you'll find me. You'll find something different on each one. So if you're a tweeter, or if you're very much into LinkedIn, or if you kind of like scrolling IG, there's a different aspect of me, but still all connected to the same work, the same ideas of becoming different and better. Like, how do we access a new level of our sanity, a new level of our growth and creativity by breaking these cycles? Each one of those aspects of me present that. So feel free to type that in, at Rodney C. Burris. My website is rodneycburris.com. And if you wanted to email me, you can use info@rodneycburris.com. So
there you go, people. So go to rodneycburris.com, check out his offers for his book, especially for those of you who are listening. And if you want to hire him, you can, I'm sure, do so through his website as well. And for those of you who want to get a free book on my website, go to askjoannevictoria.com to get your copy of the True Self Handbook, a guide to transform your life. I want to thank Rodney C. Burris for being here today. He's been very insightful in his sharing, caring perspective as a human being first, because that's what has to be satisfied first, is we as humans. Then the job comes second, but it is a cycle in its own self. Get off the cycle and run, Rodney. Go take care of business. We'll talk to everybody soon. Take care. Bye-bye.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Sanity Project podcast. Please go to AskJoanneVictoria.com to listen to more podcasts. Check out Joanne's coaching programs and get a free copy of her report, 5 Steps to Achieve Life-Work Harmony. That's AskJoanneVictoria.com. Take care, and thanks for being here.